Just a few days ago, in a world holding its breath against the use of war, a megacity of 14 million people, the heart of the entire Middle East, suddenly sank into a sea of fire, utterly disconnected and groaning beneath the crushing weight of falling bombs. But this was no surprise. It was a bloody event that many geopolitical experts had easily foreseen. But how did a poor muddy town nestled at the foot of a mountain rise to become a magnificent metropolis, only to lock itself into the most brutal geopolitical chess game on the planet? There is an ironic truth about power. Sometimes the wealth of an empire is not measured by the gold in its treasury, but by its ability to deceive the eye. Here kings use tens of thousands of imported shattered glass pieces to plaster their walls, creating an infinite illusion of prosperity to conceal a kingdom crumbling from within. How did a frantic ambition for westernization inadvertently tear this city into two opposing life and death halves? Let's dismantle the time machine and step into the first part of a symphony of blood power and dust named Tehran. In the late 18th century, the land of Persia was engulfed in the flames of civil war. In 1786, Aga Muhammad Khan, the leader of the Qajar dynasty, a general bearing the brutal scars of a tormented childhood, unified the Persian Empire. He brushed aside proud cities like Isfahan or Shiraz to choose a tiny town named Tehran as his capital. At that time, Tehran had nothing but dust, flat-roofed houses made of mud and straw and earthen walls. So why this place? Through a geopolitical lens, it was a genius move for survival. Tehran sat right at the foot of the Alborz Mountains. It served both as a massive natural shield against the expansion of the Russian Empire from the north and flanked the stronghold of the Qajar tribe. If anything went wrong, the king always had an absolutely safe retreat route back to his people. But once it became the capital, it had to don a royal cloak. The Qajar dynasty can be seen through the lens of the Golestan Palace. Step into the palace's famous Hall of Mirrors, Talari Ayne. Tens of thousands of shattered glass pieces from Europe were exquisitely cut by Persian craftsmen to cover the ceilings and walls. Under the crystal light, images were multiplied thousands of times. It created the illusion of a vast, limitlessly prosperous empire, helping the Qajar kings conceal the naked truth of a depleting economy and military weakness compared to the West outside the city walls. An empire cannot survive solely on light illusions in a mirror hall. The true lifeblood that nourishes a nation always smells of sweat money and devotion. Just a few steps from the Golestan Palace, join me in diving into the Grand Bazaar. The glaring desert sunlight instantly gives way to dim rays, filtering through the gaps in the vaulted brick ceilings. You will be assaulted by an intense blend, the sweet, pungent scent of saffron and rosewater mixed with the raw smell of half-tanned sheepskin. Navigating through the narrow alleys, you hear the deafening hammer strikes of bare-chested coppersmiths beside their fires. In another corner, merchants, bazaris in long cloaks are whispering, straining their necks to haggle every single rial for a batch of silk. And nestled deep within the very fabric of the market are mosques and religious schools, madrasas. The sounds of bargaining intertwined with chanting prayers beat like the heart of a bustling metropolis. The Grand Bazaar was also the birthplace of the most formidable counterpower alliance in Iranian history, the union between the merchant class holding the supply chain and money, and the Islamic clergy holding spiritual authority and social justice. When the Qajar kings, desperate for cash, began selling off national economic privileges, like the tobacco monopoly, to Britain or Russia, a domino effect was instantly triggered. The Bazaris would slam their shop doors shut, paralyzing the economy, while the clergy would issue religious decrees, fatwas opposing the king to protect national interests. The gears of resistance were lubricated very early on in these dark alleys. How do you magically transform a traditional society into a Western power in just one generation? The answer of dictators is always level the past. Entering the 1920s, the remnants of World War I left Iran in shambles. In 1925, a cavalry general named Reza Khan overthrew the Qajar dynasty and established the Pahlavi dynasty. He carried a violent ambition to modernize Iran at all costs, and Tehran became his canvas to rewrite history using the philosophy of tabula rasa, wiping the slate clean to start over. Bulldozers roared into the city. The 12 magnificent city gates with their exquisite tiled minarets and the ancient mud walls were ruthlessly torn down. Reza Shah did not want a closed defensive capital. He wanted a flashy opening up towards the west. Pahlavi Avenue, 18 kilometers long, sliced like a knife straight through the city from the southern desert up to the northern foothills. The urban lifestyle was instantly turned upside down. The epicenter was Lalazar Street, dubbed the Champs-Élysées of Tehran. At night, the medieval darkness was chased away by flashing neon lights from Hollywood cinemas, cabarets, and tea houses. On the street, you would see modern urban women walking confidently wearing Parisian, cinched miniskirts and high heels, entirely casting aside the traditional chador veil. Left-wing intellectuals sat in smoke-filled cafes, passionately debating Western philosophy. The Pahlavi regime used the urban landscape as a tool to force the secularization of society. However, this westernization only occurred on the surface for a select elite. By trying to force the nation into a shirt that was too tight and entirely alien to its indigenous cultural roots, the Pahlavi dynasty inadvertently pushed the rest of society into a profound sense of loss and trauma regarding their identity. You can build the widest avenues, but if that development leaves the vulnerable behind, every paved road will turn into a detonator. In the 1960s, fueled by massive oil wealth, the second Shah Mohammad Reza Pahlavi launched the White Revolution, a program of massive land reform and industrialization. The intention was good, but the outcome was a disaster. The reforms shattered the traditional agricultural structure, but failed to provide enough capital support for small farmers. Tens of thousands of farms went bankrupt. Millions of landless farmers flocked to the capital looking for a bowl of rice. And Tehran was torn into two halves by class just as it was by its terrain. North Tehran, situated on the cool slopes of the Alborz Mountains, received crystal-clear spring water. This was the domain of royalty officials and the ultra-rich. They lived in villas, shopped for designer brands, and consumed luxury goods by European standards. South Tehran, located in the arid depression bordering the desert, bore the brunt of all the wastewater flowing down from the north. This was where slums of torn, corrugated iron sprang up with no electricity or clean water. The migrant farmers had to work as porters, enduring hyperinflation and contempt. For the poor in South Tehran, the unimaginable ostentation in the north did not represent freedom or development. In the eyes of those clinging to traditional faith for comfort, the neon lights on Lalazar Street were symbols of moral decay, a trampling of sacred values. The extreme wealth gap combined with the Savak's secret police's fierce suppression of any dissenting voices would inevitably lead to revolution. History is always like that, and rulers seem to never learn from it. And by the late 1970s, Tehran could no longer withstand the pressure of that division. From the dark slums of South Tehran, from the underground networks of the Grand Bazaar cassette tapes containing the fiery sermons of an exiled Ayatollah, began to be passed from hand to hand. The wind from the Alborz Mountains had changed direction. The greatest religious storm of the 20th century was preparing to sweep away the king's crown. Does violence ever completely resolve injustice? Why did a revolution in the name of the poor and freedom ultimately lock this city behind a new theocratic curtain? In Part 2, we will continue to explore the reign of Scud missiles during the War of the Cities in the 80s, the fierce resistance of a young generation yearning for freedom, and the blazing night sky of 2026. Will the soul of Tehran survive the ashes? Stay tuned for the next part with me, Robert Langdon from Reconstruction History.